Welcome back to Grimverse History, where we uncover the strange and forgotten sides of history. Tonight we step beyond legend into a darker historical silence. This story is not about vampires or cinematic monsters. It is about power, fear, and women erased from memory. Hollywood gave you a seductive immortal in a black cape. History left behind bodies arranged as warnings. Here, beauty was never the point of terror. Suffering was designed to be seen, remembered, and obeyed. Do not imagine a battlefield filled with clashing swords. You find yourself in streets where breathing must be careful. Families watch nearby, knowing you cannot look away. This story unfolds where fear becomes daily architecture. If this moment feels worth staying with, linger a little longer. A quiet like or a gentle subscription helps these stories breathe. Tell us where you are listening from tonight. Different places, same shadows, shared human past now. Dim the lights around you. Let the room settle into stillness and shadow. Breathe slowly as the noise of today fades. History speaks best when the present steps back. You stand inside 15th century Wallachia, not as a hero, not as a witness, but as someone whose body carried political meaning. This is where the story truly begins. You are often told cruelty follows war naturally, that violence spills out when chaos stays unchecked, that time eventually excuses what power does. But here violence behaves with deliberate intention. It arrives on schedule, not by emotional overflow. It repeats itself with chilling administrative calm. It follows patterns that resemble policy, not rage. Vlad the Impaler does not drift into brutality. He designs it as one designs governance. He applies fear the way others apply law. You stand inside a town that still looks orderly. Walls remain upright. Doors carefully remain closed. Nothing burns yet, and that is intentional. Then your attention shifts toward the women nearby. Not walking freely through streets or markets. Not speaking without calculating possible consequences. Not existing without being quietly evaluated. Their bodies are not accidental victims of war. They function as tools inside political machinery. Each punishment carries a message meant for witnesses. In this system, suffering must always be visible. A woman's body speaks before she is allowed. You hear footsteps echo across cold stone ground, slow, measured, and unmistakably official in rhythm. A ruler seeking obedience targets more than soldiers. He governs households, kitchens, and sleeping chambers. He regulates fabric, marriage, and whispered rumors. A poorly sewn garment becomes ideology reliance. A body becomes proof that authority remains watching. None of this feels chaotic or uncontrolled tonight, because chaos was never the intended design. Fear works better when it feels organized. The feast does not begin with screams or running. It begins with polished tables and borrowed smiles. Candles burn steadily as if nothing waits behind them. You sit among men who believe invitations mean safety. Their clothes are formal, their posture carefully rehearsed. They speak of loyalty, tradition, and proper Easter order. The room smells of roasted meat and warm bread. It smells like continuity, like things remaining familiar, that illusion lasts longer than it should. Then the timing shifts quietly and without announcement. Guards move with the calm of planned routine. This is not anger breaking loose suddenly. The men are removed first, efficiently and without ceremony. No speeches interrupt the process. No explanations follow. The feast continues. In a way that matters, what remains is not silence, but reorganization. Your eyes move toward the women still seated. They do not run because running was never offered. Chains replace conversation with a clearer set of instructions. They are not killed quickly like their husbands. They are reassigned a longer role in the evening. Survival becomes part of the punishment design. You feel the air cool as doors open outward. Night waits patiently, already aware of its function. The march begins without dramatic signals or music. The road uphill feels endless even before exhaustion arrives. Bare hands meet stone that does not care. Poenari Castle rises slowly through collective suffering. You notice how pain becomes repetitive, almost administrative. Every step teaches the same lesson again. Families are dismantled by design, not accident. This is not revenge dressed as justice. This is architecture built with human endurance. The message is delivered slowly. For clarity by dawn, fear has a visible shape. It stands on the mountain, already taking form. The elite do not disappear quietly that year. They are removed through their households instead. Power, prefers demonstrations. You understand something important at this point. This was never about eliminating rivals efficiently. It was about teaching survival the wrong lesson. The lesson spreads faster than any written decree. You learn it by watching others build walls, Easter ends, but the structure remains standing. States often begin with ceremonies like this. Terror simply proved more durable than tradition. Morning arrives quietly in ordinary streets. No banners announce danger, no horns signal emergency. Life appears calm enough to trust routines. You walk past houses that look carefully normal. Doors stay closed longer than necessary. Windows reflect movement without revealing intentions. Here, terror does not need spectacle every day. It settles into habits, gestures, and glances. It learns how to live politely among people. Vlad does not reserve control for noble families. He extends authority into daily moral detail. Rules drift downward until they reach ordinary bodies. You notice clothing before noticing faces. Fabric length suddenly carries political weight. A sleeve becomes longer, or trouble follows. Everyone knows them without being told directly. Knowledge spreads through observation, not instruction. You lower your voice without realizing why. You correct your posture without remembering when. Your body learns caution faster than your mind. Accusations travel faster than explanations ever do. A rumor replaces evidence with remarkable efficiency. A marriage ends and another begins too soon. That timing alone becomes a public problem. Private choices acquire administrative significance overnight. You feel eyes where no guards stand. The street seems longer, louder, more exposed. Visibility itself becomes the primary offense. Punishment does not need to arrive frequently. One example educates 100 efficiently. You understand the lesson without attending school. Fear becomes the most reliable instructor available. Compliance feels safer than misunderstanding the rules. This system runs on anticipation rather than reaction. People discipline themselves long before authority appears. Power enjoys rest when citizens manage themselves. Nothing about the body remains neutral anymore. You notice how exhaustion replaces resistance gradually. Constant vigilance drains energy faster than labor. People choose survival over interpretation every time. The street grows quieter as evening approaches, shadows lengthen, and conversations shorten. It waits patiently inside familiar routine. This is how ordinary days become enforcement tools. No ceremony required, no witnesses invited. Fear simply learns to live comfortably. War arrives without enough soldiers or steady supply lines. You feel the ground colder as armies approach slowly. Numbers look wrong, and silence fills the distance. He lacks forces, so he redesigns perception itself. Fear becomes the missing regiment nobody wants. You smell damp earth before seeing anything organized. Rows stand arranged with deliberate, exhausting precision. This is not chaos pretending to be victory. It is calculation performed at an uncomfortable scale. Families appear inside the message. Women and children become part of the visual argument. You realize the audience matters more than the casualties. The display faces outward, aimed toward Ottoman movement. It speaks a language older than written orders, advance, and this becomes your morning view. Even seasoned commanders hesitate before such deliberate scenes. You picture banners stopping midair, then lowering quietly. Retreat does not require explanation. After witnessing that horror performs the work. Armies usually handle this strategy consumes families to save resources. Efficiency becomes the unspoken virtue of terror. You notice how silence spreads faster than orders. The land remembers even when armies forget. Victory here means absence rather than occupation. The message stands long after soldiers turn back. Power sometimes wins by being seen once. The rest is unnecessary repetition. Night carries the image forward without further effort. You try sleeping, but the scene remains awake. Distance fails when stories travel ahead of armies. The Sultan measures cost using human imagination. You sense relief mixed with something like professional respect. Psychological weapons rarely require resupply or rest. Families pay the difference between armies and fear. The ground cools, and the display keeps speaking. Nothing more needs to happen for effectiveness. War pauses when terror finishes the sentence. You understand why fewer battles appear in records. Spectacle replaced logistics with unsettling cess. The field requires witnesses, not winning formations. People carry images longer than supply counts. The tactic ages well because memory cooperates. You leave the scene, but it follows. Fear rarely stays where it was introduced. It travels ahead, saving rulers considerable effort. This is warfare reduced to a single site. Efficy closes the campaign without marching orders. Time moves forward, but stories choose short. You feel the room warm as candles replace torches. Stone turns into velvet, and blood becomes suggestion. Centuries later, Vlad survives as something charming. A cape appears where armor once stood heavy. Fangs replace records, and mystery replaces accounting. You recognize this version immediately from familiar screens. He moves gracefully, speaks softly, and suffers beautifully. Pain becomes aesthetic, and cruelty learns to flirt. Hollywood does not deny violence outright, it simply jukes attention toward the spectacle. The monster becomes fascinating, and fascination forgives much. You notice who disappears during this transformation. Women fade first, quietly and without resistance. Fat design, power, built on their erasure, gains a new costume. History's sharp edges smooth themselves for comfort. Memory chooses what feels easier to carry forward. You sit comfortably while the past becomes manageable. A single figure absorbs blame, drama, and curiosity. Complex system collapse into one captivating silhouette. This process feels natural or stand alone dramatically. Victims complicate pacing and challenge narrative pleasure. You sense the trade happening without negotiation in exchange for romance. Names quietly vanish in exchange for myth. Responsibility becomes abstract. The question shifts almost without your permission. Was he cruel enough to deserve the legend? Not who paid the price for his authority. You are invited to admire instead of remember. The monster receives immortality through repetition. The forgotten remain finite, unquoted, and unnamed. This is not accidental storytelling drift. It is cultural efficiency. Working as designed, myths travel lighter when they carry fewer bodies. You hear applause where silence once belonged. The screen fades to black at a convenient moment. Calm replaces accountability, yet something remains unresolved beneath the elegance. Power did not rise from imagination alone. It required real lives to support its ascent. You begin noticing what is no longer shown. Absence becomes the most honest historical evidence. What is missing explains more than what remains. Memory asks easier questions than history does. Monsters are simpler than systems to explain. Victims demand attention without offering entertainment. You understand the final discomfort clearly now. The issue was never measuring Vlad's cruelty. The issue was deciding whose suffering deserved remembrance. Culture remembers what it can sell gently. History remembers what refuses to stay quiet. The difference explains far more than legends do. The monster sleeps well inside collective memory. The victims remain awake, waiting without credits. The night settles gently around us now. The journey releases its weight, little by little. Nothing else needs to follow you tonight. Somewhere behind us, stone walls keep their cold. You can still sense wind moving through old corridors. Footsteps fade, leaving only distance and quiet. I close this chapter without making a sound. Like a book returning to its familiar place, the past rests, no longer asking to be held. You come back to this moment easily. The room feels warmer than before. Your breathing slows, steady and unforced. These stories do not ask for judgment. They only ask to be remembered briefly sometimes. That is already enough. If this quiet passage through history stayed with you, feel free to stay a little longer. A soft like a gentle share, a simple subscription. They keep these nights open and unhurried. Nothing here demands more than your presence. For now, let the images fade naturally. The present closes the door with care. Goodbye, and we will meet again.